humans fear death so much when most people think that we're returning to source. So if we're going back to where we came, regardless of, what you think of God particularly, or the, individual religion, why would we be afraid of that?
Yeah. My experience is that people don't actually believe that they're going back to source. They don't have an idea of source, Amy. And I feel lucky to have the concept and the experience of source that I do, because I'm aware of a frequency and an energy beyond my physical being. I'm quite comfortable in that realm. But many people don't have that. And they don't actually have any experience of source, or what is source? That lifelong question, who is God? What is God? And I don't know, I struggle a little bit here in some of the religious terminology. There's a lot of prayers, even I'm not worthy, please forgive me.
Yeah, we're
so
sinners.
Starting from a baseline of, I'm not worthy to enter heaven or to enter source. And for me, we've got it all back to front. It's like, here I am, welcome home.
Welcome
to
home.
me, that's what it feels like. So I think that's the piece. And plus it's, we don't have the experience. I know we have some people who have the near-death experiences who maybe come back and tell us what it was like. But in general, once you're dead, you're dead. So there's nobody coming back and saying, listen, lads, it's okay. And
True.
we have difficulty. We have difficulty going beyond our physical and saying, okay, if this physical body goes, what's left of me? Now, for me, this physical body is probably the least bit of me. Everything else is just so much more. Yeah.
That's beautiful. And you had a near-death experience, though. So tell us about that, almost drowning as a child. I mean, and how did that impact your concept of death and life and your work?
It's interesting, Amy, because, I had that experience. Now, I remembered it, but it wasn't relevant to me until, probably quite recently in years.
Wow.
But when I think back on it, it was so formative. But it isn't something that sort of stuck with me from that moment in time. It was later that it had huge impact. I almost drowned in a swimming pool, but I was sitting on the bottom of the pool. I had gone beyond that fight. I was sitting there. My hair was floating. There was bubbles just coming out of my mouth. But the just overwhelming sense of peace. I was totally at ease, totally at peace. There was no fear, there was no drama, there was no fight. It was just, this is beautiful. Now I was pulled off the bottom of the pool, thankfully, so I'm still here today. But as I say, at that moment in time, and even for years after it, it obviously lodged somewhere subconsciously, but in my conscious memory, it wasn't until latter years that made a significant impact on me, that it was like, gosh, yeah, I know that sense of peace when we let go.
Well, I think that that's amazing, very inspiring and comforting. But I think to my question about the whole fear of death thing, yes, it's a huge mystery, right? Like you said, nobody comes back alive, bump. So how do we really know? But we don't, in our culture, we don't really have a sense of reverence for the cycle of life. The Ouroboros, the symbol of the snake eating its tail, the ancient symbol. And that there's life, there's death, and there's rebirth. There's the three, not the one, not the life. There's the three. So perhaps because collectively we don't really wrap our guts around, okay, this is happening, this circle, the cycle, that's probably part of it. Whereas older cultures did understand all that, And
I was going to say, our older culture here in Ireland would have been very strong in those cycles and that cyclical of the death and rebirth. In the Om language that I was speaking about, the yew tree represents death and rebirth. They're both together. There's birth for new beginnings, but there's death and rebirth are all one. So it's not one separate entity. And And I think that's the beauty of the work that, that I'm doing with death is, introducing people, giving space to allow us to really look at death. And, originally it stemmed from my palliative care colleagues wanting something a little bit experiential, wanting to go beyond the theoretical, idea of death. They wanted to feel it and experience it for themselves. So when I sat with that, and after we did our first weekend together, it was a residential weekend that we did first, the overwhelming sense from everybody who was there that death changed their whole approach to life because of having looked at death. And, sort of, I say walking with death on my shoulder, like at every moment, this might be my last breath. And that has a way of honing everything. What's important in life, what's relevant. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It gives huge perspective and great perspective. And when we do that piece, then we sort of arise with brighter eyes going, and lots of people from those weekends, they couldn't continue living the way that they were living, because recognizing, yes, death is going to come. And, for any of us, it could be any moment. So what's important in my living? And that's how I see like death walking through my life with me, my constant companion, friend, and guide, with every step. And that then for me makes every step precious and sacred because it may be my last. Every breath precious and sacred. And I regularly ask myself, if I was to die right now, how would that be? And if I can say, yeah, that'll be okay, that'll be fine, great. If I go, oh, no, not now, not yet, that's my wee signal. There's work to be done. There's something not at ease in me, or there's something, that I have to resolve within myself. So, yeah, I think it's useful to work with death in that way. Or, if we had a month left to live, how would we spend that month? Who would we choose to be with us in that month? What would we like to do? What would we like to be? What sounds would we like to hear? We explore all of that when we're working with death. Those last sounds. What last sounds would you like to hear? Yeah.
Powerful. In the ancient Greek gods and mythology, the gods were jealous of humans because the humans died. And the gods just lived eternally. So they actually were jealous of the humans because death is what gives life value.